Millionaire hires a fake date for his ex's engagement party, but she steals the show. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Rain drizzled over the glowing skyline, coating the glass towers of Manhattan in silver streaks. Inside a quiet rooftop lounge, Adrian Cole, 35, sat with a glass of bourbon untouched in his hand. To the world, he was a self-made millionaire, sharp, untouchable, the kind of man who could command a boardroom with a single glance. But tonight, the mask slipped. His ex-fiancée's engagement announcement had just lit up the society pages, and the city was already buzzing about the party she would host next week. Everyone would be there. Everyone except him. Adrian stared at the invitation lying on the table, the gold lettering taunting him. He had no intention of going alone. Pride wouldn't allow it. He needed someone by his side, someone who would make Elena regret ever walking away. That was when Maya stepped into his world. Maya Lewis had just finished her shift at the corner coffee shop downstairs, her apron still damp with spilled espresso. She wasn't supposed to be in the lounge, staff rarely were, but she'd been asked to deliver a tray upstairs. Balancing the drinks, she walked past the dim booths when she noticed him. A man in a tailored suit, sitting alone, staring at a piece of paper like it might burn him. She didn't know who he was. To her, he was just another tired face in a city full of them. But to Adrian, her timing felt like fate. "Excuse me," Maya said gently, placing the tray on the bar. Adrian looked up. Her dark hair was pulled into a messy bun. Her shoes scuffed from hours on her feet, yet there was something unshakably steady in her gaze. For a second, he almost dismissed the thought. It was crazy, ridiculous. But then Elena's mocking smile flashed in his memory. He leaned back, swirling the bourbon he hadn't touched. "You," Adrian said suddenly. Maya froze. "Me?" "Yes, you." His voice was calm, measured, the way he closed deals worth millions. "I need a date to an engagement party. It's next weekend. I'll pay you, of course. Think of it as a contract." Maya blinked, unsure if she'd misheard. "A contract? With a stranger you just met?" Adrian's eyes narrowed, studying her. She wasn't dressed for wealth, clearly. But she carried herself with a quiet resilience, the kind he hadn't seen in years. "You won't be a stranger for long," he said. "One night, pretend to be mine. All expenses covered, generous compensation afterward." She laughed in disbelief, shaking her head. "That's the most insane thing I've heard all week. I don't joke about contracts." He slid the invitation across the table toward her, the gold seal catching the light. "It's for my ex. I refuse to walk in alone." Her instincts told her to leave. This man was trouble, and nothing in her life was simple enough to gamble on a game like his. But the rent was overdue, her landlord's patience thinner by the day, and her dream of opening a book cafe felt further away every time she looked at her bank balance. She glanced down at the invitation, then back at him. "And if I say yes?" Adrian leaned forward, his tone dropping, deliberate. "Then you play the role of my girlfriend. Smile when I need you to smile. Stand tall when eyes are on us. Nothing more, nothing less." Her pulse quickened. Every instinct screamed she was stepping into dangerous territory. And yet, the offer dangled before her like a lifeline. Maya straightened, matching his gaze. "Fine. But if this is going to be a contract, then I get to add one condition of my own." Adrian arched an eyebrow. "Go on. Don't treat me like some accessory you bought to show off. I'm not a prop. I'm a person." For the first time all night, Adrian smiled. It wasn't polished or rehearsed, it was real. "Then we have ourselves a deal." And with that, the strangest agreement of Maya's life began. Rain had eased by the time Maya made her way home, but the city streets still glistened under the neon signs. She clutched her thin jacket tighter as she hurried across the cracked pavement toward her apartment building. From the outside, it looked more like a warehouse than a home peeling paint, a buzzing light over the front door, the smell of damp concrete in the hallway. Inside, The stairs creaked with every step, and by the time she reached her floor, her landlord was waiting, arms crossed. "Maya," he said, his tone clipped. "Rent was due last week." Her heart sank. She shifted the strap of her bag nervously. "I know, Mr. Douglas. I'm working extra shifts. Just give me until Friday, please." He sighed, the kind of sigh that carried more frustration than patience. "Friday. But no later. I've got people waiting for this unit." "No." She nodded quickly, fumbling with her keys until the door opened. Inside, the space was barely bigger than a shoebox. A mattress pushed against the wall, a chipped dresser, a single hot plate for cooking. She dropped her bag and collapsed onto the mattress, the springs groaning beneath her. For a long moment she just stared at the ceiling, water dripping rhythmically somewhere in the pipes. The invitation card Adrian had slid across the table was still in her bag. She pulled it out now, turning it over in her hands. Gold edges, embossed letters, the kind of thing that belonged in another world. "What am I doing even considering this?" she thought. Yet the landlord's voice echoed in her head. "Friday, no later." Maya reached for her sketchbook on the nightstand. The pages were filled with doodles, floor plans, little visions of a café she dreamed of opening one day, a place filled with books, coffee, and soft light. She ran her fingers over the pencil lines. That dream had felt so close once, when her mom was alive, when the two of them used to talk about it late at night. But after the hospital bills and the funeral, reality had closed in fast. Now it was just her, working double shifts and barely keeping the lights on. She pressed the invitation between the pages of the sketchbook and closed it. "A contract," she whispered, half to herself, half to the silence around her. "Smile when he needs me to smile. Pretend for a night. And in return," her voice trailed off, "rent paid. Maybe even a chance to breathe." The next morning, she was back behind the counter at the café, apron tied tight around her waist. The espresso machine hissed, customers barked orders, coins clattered into the register. It was routine, exhausting but familiar. Only now her mind kept circling back to the man in the tailored suit, Adrian Cole. She had looked him up online after her shift. Articles filled the search results, tech investments, charity galas, Forbes profiles. He wasn't just wealthy, he was powerful. The kind of man who moved markets with a single decision. Maya shook her head, steaming milk into a cup. To him, this was a game. To her, it could mean survival. At lunch, she slipped into the break room with a cup of black coffee she couldn't afford to sweeten. Her best friend Carla, another barista, was scrolling her phone. "You look like you saw a ghost," Carla teased. Maya hesitated, then said quietly, "What would you do if someone offered to pay you to be their fake date for a party?" Carla's eyebrows shot up. "Depends who's asking. Some drunk guy on the subway? Or someone with actual money?" "Actual money," Maya admitted. Carla set her phone down, leaning forward. "Maya, that sounds crazy. But if it's safe, maybe it's not the worst idea. You need the cash, right?" Maya sipped her coffee, staring at the wall. Safe. That was the question. Could anything about Adrian Cole possibly be safe? When her shift ended, she found herself walking not toward the subway, but toward the corner where Adrian's car had been parked the night before. She wasn't sure what she expected, maybe he wouldn't even be there. But as she turned the corner, there it was. A sleek black sedan, gleaming under the afternoon sunday. The driver stepped out and opened the door without a word. And there he was, Adrian, in another immaculate suit, looking at her like he had already known she would come. "You're late," he said evenly. Maya's pulse skipped. "I didn't say yes, yet." He smiled faintly. "Then say it now. We'll go over the terms on the way." She hesitated for one last heartbeat, then slid into the car. The leather seat swallowed her, the city blurring outside the tinted windows. She clutched her sketchbook tight against her chest as if it were armor. One night, she told herself, just one night. But deep down, she knew nothing about this was going to stay simple. The sedan glided through the city like a shadow, silent except for the low hum of the engine. Maya sat stiffly in the back seat, her sketchbook balanced on her lap, while Adrian scrolled through his phone without looking up. The silence stretched, thick with the kind of weight that made her want to fidget. She didn't. Finally he spoke. We'll need rules. She arched a brow. Rules? Yes. Think of them as conditions of the contract. He slipped the phone into his jacket pocket and turned toward her, his expression calm, almost clinical. First, this arrangement is strictly professional. No feelings, no complications. Maya snorted softly. Don't worry. Falling in love with a millionaire is the last thing on my list. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. Good. Second, you'll attend 5 events with me, starting with the engagement party. You'll stay by my side, no excuses. You'll act as if we've been dating for months. 5 events? She asked, narrowing her eyes. You only mentioned 1. Plans change, he replied smoothly. And third, you respect my privacy. No digging into my business, no wandering into places you don't belong. Maya shifted uncomfortably, clutching her sketchbook tighter. Anything else? He paused, studying her for a beat before saying, That's it. She leaned back, exhaling slowly. Then I want one of my own. Don't treat me like some accessory you bought to flash around. I'm not a handbag or a trophy. For a moment, something flickered in his gaze surprise, then respect. He gave a single nod. Fair enough. The car slowed, pulling up in front of a towering glass building. Maya craned her neck, staring up at the shimmering facade. It wasn't just an office, it was a monument, gleaming with wealth and power. Where are we? She asked. My headquarters, Adrian said simply. If you're going to play the part, you'll need preparation, clothes, etiquette, the basics. Her stomach twisted. She thought she was agreeing to one night of pretending, not a crash course in how to survive among the elite. But before she could protest, the driver opened the door, and Adrian was already striding toward the entrance. Inside, the lobby looked like something out of a movie. Marble floors, chandeliers dripping crystal, an art piece that probably cost more than her entire building. Maya followed, her sneakers squeaking faintly, drawing curious glances from staff in suits. An elevator whisked them to the top floor, doors opening to a sprawling suite that felt more penthouse than office. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a glow over shelves of books, sleek furniture, and a desk the size of her entire apartment. A woman in a tailored dress appeared, clipboard in hand. Mr. Cole, everything is ready. Thank you, Claire, Adrian said. He gestured toward Maya. This is her. Claire's eyes swept over Maya in one swift motion. Not unkind, but sharp enough to make Maya feel every flaw in her outfit, every crease in her apron still folded in her bag. Wardrobe is in the dressing room, Claire said briskly. We'll start with fittings. Afterward, I'll run her through etiquette and press protocol. Maya's eyes widened. Press protocol? I didn't sign up for… Adrian cut in, voice even. You wanted to add a condition. So did I. If you're going to be convincing, you'll need to look and act the part. Otherwise, the deal's off. Her chest tightened, torn between pride and desperation. Then she remembered her landlord's voice, the sketches of her dream café, the rent notice taped to her door. Slowly, she nodded. The next hour blurred into a whirlwind. Maya was ushered into a dressing room lined with gowns in silk and satin, rows of shoes that sparkled under the lights. Claire handed her outfits one after another, adjusting hems, tightening waists, muttering about posture and presence. Every mirror reflected someone she barely recognized, a woman draped in elegance, hair-styled, eyes lined, a stranger staring back at her. At one point, Maya stepped out in a midnight blue gown. The fabric hugged her in ways she wasn't used to, the neckline daring, the heels making her stumble slightly. Adrian, seated with a glass of water in hand, looked up. For the first time, his expression softened. You'll do, he said quietly. Maya's cheeks heated. She wasn't sure if it was a compliment or a business assessment, but either way, it left her rattled. By the time she changed back into her own clothes, her body ached from the shoes and her head spun from the crash course in etiquette. She gripped her sketchbook as Claire handed her a folder with notes. You have 3 days to practice, Claire said. The first event is Saturday night. Be ready. Maya nodded faintly, following Adrian back toward the elevator. The city stretched out beneath them, glittering like 1,000 temptations. She clutched the sketchbook to her chest and whispered to herself, it's just a contract, just a role. But deep down, she knew nothing about this was going to stay pretend. Saturday night arrived faster than Maya could prepare. The city glimmered with neon and headlights as the black sedan pulled up to her building. She smoothed her borrowed gown, nerves prickling beneath her skin. The midnight blue fabric hugged her curves, the heels felt foreign, and every step reminded her she was playing a part in someone else's world. Adrian stepped out of the car first, dressed in a perfectly tailored tuxedo that seemed made for the night itself, black silk, crisp white shirt, silver cufflinks catching the light. When his eyes landed on her, they flickered with something unspoken. Approval, maybe, or something deeper. "You look convincing," he said. "Convincing?" she echoed, raising an eyebrow. "This isn't a compliment contest, Maya. Tonight is about appearances." She rolled her eyes but slipped her hand into the crook of his arm when he offered it. The contact sent a shiver through her, though she forced herself to stay composed. The engagement party was held at the Grand Meridian Hotel, its ballroom glowing with chandeliers and filled with New York's elite. Glittering gowns, polished shoes, and laughter that sounded rehearsed floated through the air. Maya had never seen so much wealth compressed into one room. Every head turned when Adrian entered. Whispers rippled across the room, his reputation preceded him, and tonight he wasn't alone. Maya lifted her chin, forcing a smile, remembering Claire's endless instructions. Smile when they look. Stand tall. Never fidget. Then came the first test. A woman in a crimson dress drifted over, her smile sharp as glass. Elena, the ex-fiancée. "Adrian," Elena purred, leaning in to kiss his cheek. "I almost didn't believe the rumors, but here you are with company." Her eyes slid to Maya, assessing every inch. "And who might this be?" Maya's stomach nodded, but she squeezed Adrian's arm before he could answer. "I'm Maya," she said brightly. "And you must be Elena. Congratulations on the engagement. This party is stunning." "Oh," Elena's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. She hadn't expected warmth or grace. "Thank you," she said coolly. "And how did you and Adrian meet?" Maya's mind raced. Claire's voice echoed in her head. "Keep it simple. Keep it believable." She glanced up at Adrian, then back at Elena. "At a coffee shop. He spilled his drink. I told him he owed me another." Adrian's lips curved faintly, playing along. "She's been collecting ever since." A ripple of laughter spread around them, other guests drawn in by the exchange. Maya smiled easily, surprising even herself. The tension in her chest eased when she noticed Elena's eyes narrowing. Score one for the fake date. The evening blurred into introductions, champagne toasts, and countless conversations. Maya found herself improvising, turning awkward questions into little anecdotes, leaning into Adrian's presence when the scrutiny felt too sharp. And every time she stumbled, he steadied her with a subtle touch or a quiet word. At one point, a clumsy waiter nearly toppled a tray of glasses onto a guest. Without thinking, Maya darted forward, steadying the tray before disaster struck. The crowd gasped, then applauded. Maya blushed furiously, but Adrian's hand pressed gently against her back. "Well done," he murmured. "It was nothing," she whispered back. "It was everything," he said, his gaze lingering longer than it should have. As the night drew on, Maya realized something unsettling. She wasn't just surviving the evening, she was shining. The nervous barista who had walked into Adrian's world 3 days ago was gone, replaced by someone who could hold her own among the elite. And Adrian, he was watching her, really watching her, as though he couldn't quite reconcile the woman beside him with the one he'd first met in a coffee-stained apron. But then, across the ballroom, Elena's eyes met hers, cold, calculating. Maya knew this wasn't over. Tonight, she had won a round. But Elena wasn't the kind of woman who lost gracefully. Night after the party, Maya lay awake in her small apartment, the hem of the midnight blue gown still brushing her ankle where she had carelessly dropped it on the chair. She stared at the ceiling, replaying every look, every whispered comment, every moment Elena's eyes had cut into her like blades. Somehow, she had survived it. More than that, she had stolen the spotlight. But survival came at a price. The lines between pretending and living were already blurring. Adrian's voice lingered in her head, that low murmur against her ear when he said, "It was everything." 3 days later, another test awaited. This time, Not a glittering party, but a high-stakes charity gala hosted by one of Adrian's business rivals. The ballroom sparkled just as brightly, though the stakes felt heavier. Reporters lined the entrance, cameras flashing. Maya tightened her grip on Adrian's arm as they stepped into the storm of light. "Remember," he whispered, leaning close, "you don't flinch, no matter what they ask." She nodded, her smile fixed. The questions came like arrows. "Who are you? How long have you been together? Is this serious?" Maya answered with poise, her voice steady. "We met months ago. He's not just brilliant, he's kind." Each word rolled off her tongue with surprising ease, and with each answer, Adrian's hand pressed firmer against her back, as though anchoring her. Inside, the crowd buzzed with polished laughter and music. Maya followed Adrian through clusters of suits and gowns, holding herself tall. The night stretched on speeches, toasts, introductions. At one point, Adrian was pulled aside by investors, leaving Maya momentarily adrift. Elena struck then. She appeared with a glass of champagne, smile razor-sharp. "You do play the part well," she said softly. Her tone meant only for Maya. "But women like you don't last in this world. You're a novelty, pretty for a season, disposable after." Maya's chest burned, but she forced her lips into a serene smile. "Funny," she said sweetly. "That's exactly what people must have said about you when Adrian was still by your side." The words landed. Elena's smile faltered, her eyes flashing. But before she could retort, Adrian returned, slipping an arm around Maya's waist. "Everything all right?" he asked. "Perfect," Maya said brightly, tilting her head toward him. And for the first time, she realized it wasn't entirely a lie. Later that evening, after the gala, Adrian led her out onto the balcony overlooking the river. The city lights glittered like fallen stars on the water. For once, there was no audience, just them. "You handled yourself well tonight," he said quietly. "Was that another test?" she asked, crossing her arms. "Every night is a test," he admitted. "But you surprised me." The wind tugged at her hair, carrying the faint scent of his cologne. She wanted to push back, to remind him this was only a contract. Yet standing there, the distance between them shrinking, she saw a crack in his carefully built walls. His eyes were not the cold steel of a CEO tonight. They were weary, human. "I don't do this," Adrian said suddenly. "I don't let people in. Because when I did once..." He stopped, jaw tightening. "Elena?" Maya asked softly. His silence was answer enough. Maya hesitated, then touched his arm gently. "She doesn't get to define you." For a long moment, neither moved. Then Adrian looked down at her, his face unreadable. "Careful, Maya," he murmured. "Lines blur easily when you're pretending." Her heart thudded, but she held his gaze. Maybe they already have. The city lights shimmered around them, but it was the quiet between their words that spoke loudest. And in that silence, something shifted dangerous, undeniable, real. The following week, the city buzzed with talk of Adrian Cole. Photos of him and Maya from the charity gala splashed across business magazines and gossip blogs alike, the mysterious new woman at his side. Maya tried not to look, but every newsstand, every glowing phone screen reminded her she wasn't invisible anymore. Back in her tiny apartment, she stared at the articles with disbelief. It felt surreal, as though she were watching someone else's life. Yet when she thought of Adrian's hand steady on her back, his eyes softening on the balcony, her chest tightened in ways she couldn't explain. A knock on her door jolted her. When she opened it, Adrian stood there. Perfectly pressed suit and all, holding a small box. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, glancing nervously down the hall. "Relax," he said smoothly. "Your landlord's more concerned about unpaid rent than paparazzi." She bristled. "How do you know about that?" He held up the box. "Because I make it my job to know everything that might compromise my deals. This is for Saturday. Elena's family is hosting a board dinner. Wear it." Inside lay a silver necklace, delicate, gleaming against the black velvet. Maya's fingers brushed the chain, but she quickly snapped the box shut. "You can't just buy me, Adrian." "No." His eyes narrowed. "It's not about buying you. It's about protecting an image. If you're going to stand beside me, you need to look untouchable." She shook her head. "I told you, I'm not a prop." For the first time, his polished calm cracked. He exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. You think this is easy for me? Bringing someone into my world? You think I want to care what anyone says? But the truth is, he stopped himself, jaw tightening. Maya waited, pulse hammering, but he turned away. Forget it. Just wear the necklace. The board dinner was held in a marble-lined hall, candlelight flickering over long tables set with crystal and silver. Elena was there, seated near her fiancé, her expression unreadable, as Adrian and Maya entered. Maya's gown shimmered under the chandeliers, the silver necklace resting against her collarbone. Whispers rose again, sharper this time. Investors eyed her curiously, some skeptically. The dinner dragged on presentations, discussions, deals, whispered over dessert. Maya kept her smile steady, answering polite questions, laughing at the right moments. But she felt the tension coil tighter with every glance exchanged across the table. Near the end of the evening, a shareholder raised his glass. To Adrian Cole, he said, voice carrying. Not only for his business acumen, but for finally finding someone who can keep up with him. The room chuckled, glasses clinking. Maya forced a smile, cheeks burning. Adrian squeezed her hand beneath the table, his touch grounding her. Yet when she glanced at him, his gaze wasn't on the shareholder. It was on her steady, unreadable, dangerous. After dinner, they slipped out to the terrace for air. The city stretched below, a glittering sea. Maya leaned against the railing, her pulse still racing. They see me as an accessory, she muttered. Adrian's voice was low, almost rough. They see you because you shine. That's the difference. Her heart skipped. She wanted to dismiss it as flattery, as part of the act. But the way he looked at her like he wasn't acting anymore unraveled her defenses. She turned away, gripping the railing. This was supposed to be pretend. Maybe it still is, he said softly. Or maybe it isn't. The silence stretched, filled only by the hum of traffic below. And for the first time, Maya realized she was terrified not of failing the role, not of Elena, but of what might happen if she kept letting herself believe. 2 days later, the story broke. Maya was pouring coffee at the café when Carla burst in, waving her phone. Maya, you need to see this. On the screen was a headline splashed across every gossip site. Adrian Cole's girlfriend exposed as paid companion. Beneath it, a grainy photo of Maya leaving Adrian's car. And another worse, a blurry shot of what looked like a contract spread across a table. Her stomach dropped. That's not... She couldn't finish. Her hands trembled as she scrolled, reading the accusations. That she was nothing more than a hired actress. That Adrian had staged everything to humiliate Elena. That Maya was after money. The café felt suddenly too small. Every customer's glance a spotlight. Carla put a hand on her arm. Don't read the comments. Just don't. But it was too late. The words were etched in her head. Gold digger. Fraud. Pathetic. That evening, she stormed into Adrian's office. The skyline glowed behind him as he looked up from his desk. You saw it. You knew this could happen? Her voice shook. You let them paint me like some escort? Adrian's jaw clenched. Calm down. Calm down, she snapped. My life is unraveling. My landlord's already hinting I should leave before your circus drags down the building. I can't even walk down the street without people whispering. And you, she pointed at him, furious. You sit here in your glass tower like nothing touches you. His eyes flashed. You think I'm not touched? That I wanted this? Then why didn't you deny it? Why didn't you say the truth? Adrian stood, his voice sharp now. Because the truth is complicated, Maya. If I admit we have a contract, they'll believe every lie. If I deny it, they'll still say you're a gold digger. Either way, you burn. Her chest ached, hot with betrayal. So I'm just collateral damage in your war with Elena? For a moment, silence. Then his voice dropped, low, almost raw. This was never about Elena anymore. Maya froze. The words should have soothed her, but instead they tore her apart. Because if it wasn't about Elena, then what was it? She grabbed her sketchbook from the chair where she had left it days before. I can't do this, Adrian. I can't live like a headline. I'd rather struggle in my little apartment than sell myself to be your shield. He reached for her, but she stepped back. Her voice cracked as she whispered, Don't call me again. And then she was gone, the echo of the door slamming, reverberating through the office. Adrian stood alone, staring at the city lights that suddenly felt colder, harsher. For the first time in years, the man who had built an empire out of control realized he was losing the only thing he couldn't buy back. Maya walked through the crowded streets, head down, tears burning her eyes. The necklace still glimmered against her collarbone, heavy with meaning she wished she could forget. She yanked it off and shoved it into her bag. This had been a contract, a deal, nothing more. But her heart knew better, and that was what hurt most of all. A week passed in silence. Maya avoided the glossy magazines, the glowing screens, the whispers that trailed her down every block. She poured coffee, counted change, and pretended not to hear customers murmuring her name. At night she sat with her sketchbook open but couldn't draw a single line. Every page blurred with Adrian's face, his voice, his eyes the night he'd told her. This was never about Elena anymore. You. Then one morning, Carla shoved a flyer into her hands. "You need to see this," she said, breathless. Across the page were bold letters. "The Art of Maya Lewis Private Exhibition, hosted by the Carter Foundation." Maya's heart stopped. Her sketches, her café designs, her drawings of the city, the dreams she had tucked away in a worn notebook. How had he found them? That evening, curiosity dragged her to the address listed. A gallery, bright and humming with people. She hovered at the entrance, stunned. On the walls hung her work, enlarged, framed, lit like masterpieces. Her name gleamed in gold above the doorway. Whispers filled the air. "She's the girl from the headlines. But look at this. She's talented." Her throat tightened. She stepped inside, each painting a piece of her soul laid bare. At the center of the room stood Adrian, dressed in a simple suit for once. No tie, no armor. When their eyes met, the noise around them faded. "Maya," he said softly, almost like a plea, "I should have told you sooner. I found your sketchbook in my office. I wanted the world to see you the way I do." She shook her head, overwhelmed. "You had no right?" "I know," he cut in, "but I also know I can't lose you without trying. This isn't about contracts, or appearances, or Elena. This is about you, about us." The crowd seemed to hold its breath as Adrian reached into his pocket. He pulled out not a contract, not a necklace, but a small velvet box. Inside, a ring shimmered under the lights. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Adrian's voice was steady, clear. "The first time I asked you, it was business. Tonight, it's not. No conditions, no rules. Just me, asking you to choose me. For real." Maya's chest ached, her eyes burning. She wanted to resist, to remind him of the pain, the scandal, the chaos. But all around her, the proof of his grand gesture glowed from the walls, her dream, given life because of him. Her fingers trembled as she closed the sketchbook she still carried, pressing it to her chest. Then, slowly, she stepped forward. "Adrian," she whispered, voice breaking. "If this is real, then yes." The gallery erupted in applause. And for the first time, Maya let herself believe it wasn't pretend anymore. The applause faded into laughter, music, and clinking glasses as the gallery became a celebration. Maya stood close to Adrian, her hand still trembling in his, the ring glinting under the soft lights. For once, the cameras didn't matter, the whispers didn't sting. The story was no longer about a scandal or a contract, it was about them. Later that night, long after the guests had left and the gallery stood quiet, Maya wandered the room alone. She paused in front of one of her sketches, a simple drawing of a small café with shelves of books and a warm glow spilling through the windows. It looked exactly like the dream she had tucked away for so long. "You'll have it," Adrian said behind her, his voice low but sure. She turned, confused. "What do you mean?" "I bought the building on 5th Avenue, the one you always pass after your shift. It's yours now, for the café, for your dream." Her eyes widened, tears welling. "Adrian, you can't just—" "I can," he interrupted gently. "But this time, it's not about money. It's about you believing you deserve more than survival. You deserve a life built on what you love." Maya pressed a hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. For years she had been defined by struggle, by the weight of bills and the fear of losing everything. And now, this man, once just a stranger with an impossible proposition, was offering her more than security. He was offering her a future. She stepped closer, resting her forehead against his chest. "You know, when you first asked me to pretend, I thought it was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard." He chuckled softly, wrapping his arms around her. "And now?" "Now," she whispered, looking up at him. "It's the best mistake I ever made." Weeks later, their wedding was nothing like Elena's glittering parties or the boardroom galas. Instead, it was held in the very café Maya had dreamed of, still fresh with paint and filled with books. Friends, colleagues, and a handful of loyal customers gathered under strings of warm lights. Adrian stood waiting at the front, his suit simple, his eyes steady. Maya walked toward him in a gown that wasn't designer, but felt perfect. Her sketchbook clutched in her hands like a promise. When she reached him, she placed it on the counter beside them, open to the first drawing she'd ever made of the café. The vows were short, heartfelt, stripped of pretense. When Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger, there was no contract, no conditions, only love, written plainly for all to see. As they kissed, the crowd erupted in cheers, and Maya felt a warmth bloom in her chest that no chandelier could ever outshine. She had stepped into his world as a fake, bound by rules and secrets. Now, she stood by his side as his wife, chosen freely, truly. And as the night stretched on, laughter echoing through the café she now owned, Maya knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't a